Today's guest is Kristin Ericksen, the founder of Break Free, Make It Happen. It's a transformative platform designed to encourage, uplift, and enhance the lives of women worldwide. She spent 25 years as a celebrity personal trainer in Los Angeles. Interesting, very interesting backstory. And then New York City, working with high profile clients, and a very interesting story related to one of her high profile clients, which really was one of the worst things in her life that led to an amazing future for her as a result. So stay tuned for that one. But her expertise and dedication to her craft have made her a trusted and respected figure in the industry. Kristen's ambitious nature allowed her to easily pivot into finance, becoming a fully licensed financial planner and advisor with one of the world's most admired companies. And she's used her strong communication skills and attention to detail to help clients plan for their financial futures. Today, Kristin is a worldwide real estate investor, peak performance and development trainer, as well as an aspiring keynote speaker. And we had the most wonderful conversation. I loved what she brought to the almost hour of our conversation. She taught me a new word, which I loved, which we share right off the bat. We also talked about the 5 traits of unstoppable women. She works largely with women. She runs a workshop every month. I'll have the link in the show notes for you. But the 5 traits, just briefly, are mindset, character, personality, transparency, and communication. We touched on 3 of them because they're 3 words I don't hear a lot from guests, and we dove deep. Her perspective was very valuable. She's very wise. She's very articulate, and we think very much alike. I just loved her. I loved her energy. I loved her vibe, including her little setting where she was sitting. But yeah, we really hit it off, and I could have talked a lot longer. And it's always good when those kind of episodes happened. So I would love to share her with you. And so let's get to the episode now. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Sparked Second Half. And with me today, I have Kristin Ericksen, and she's just very bubbly, very vibrant, high energy, hit it off immediately. And I want to climb into her room and have coffee with her. So if you're on my YouTube channel, you got to take a look and plus, I love your shirt. It's
Oh, thank you.
so vibrant. I like pink. So you got the pinks going on. So welcome.
Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate you having me. This has just been automatically great energy. So I'm really excited to have this chat today.
Yes, yes. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was number one, your backstory. So you have an interesting backstory. And just so people know, Kristin's 50. So she's at the perfect age where she is entering the most, I think, the best part of her life, where the second half is unfolding in ways that we have no idea. And you're really lit up. I could just tell how you exude yourself that you're really lit up about life. And I love to have people as an example like you on my podcast. Yes.
Thank
So
you.
why don't we start by you sharing just really what you're doing now, why you're so lit up, and how you got there. And
Absolutely.
I know we'll have lots to talk about because some of the things we talked about before hit record really resonated with me. So I know it's going to resonate with my audience.
Yeah. Well, what I have found at this point in the game, just turning 50, okay, is, your purpose and your passion when you're younger might not line up. You might be doing something that you are passionate about, but maybe it's not your complete end purpose. And then as you go through life and life keeps lifing, there comes a point when life may catapult you down to the bottom. I'm sure most of your listeners have been through, maybe it's a physical ailment that shot them down. For me, it was a back injury. I was an athlete my entire life. I was a celebrity personal trainer for 25 years out of Los Angeles and New York City with some of the top A-listers you could possibly imagine. utilizing my body to make money, trading hours for dollars endlessly, waking up at 3:45 in the morning to be on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles by 4:30 in the morning to be at my first client at 5 o'clock in the morning. Just the quintessential grind.
And
And this is
how'd you get into that line of work?
how did I get into that? Oh my gosh. Well, as my mother describes it, I came out of the womb doing cartwheels. So I think it was just a natural progression. I started as a little dancer, a tap dancer at the age of 2, and that transitioned into a gymnast. I started tumbling. I was competing nationally at the age of 7. And I was just an athlete my whole entire life. It always interested me. My father was involved in the sports world as well as a professional trainer for an NBA basketball team. So it was kind of always around me. And I'm the only girl in my entire family. All the rest of my family are boys. So I grew up as a tomboy, certainly not wearing pink at that time. More of, lacing up your sneakers and going out and to play football, baseball, whatever.
And a high
Um,
achiever. I mean, if you think
it,
about it, from age 2, doing the
yeah.
cartwheels and wanting to achieve the things. And I wonder if there's a tie in between tomboys and high achievers. Are there? Because I was a tomboy.
Yes, I will take it a step further, Lori. I firmly believe, and it's actually part of what I teach of my entrepreneurial ladies. And by the way, anything that you want to learn or know or be invited to, please click the link that'll be in the show notes. Kristin Ericksen. It's Kristin R. Ericksen at Instagram, all kinds of good stuff for you. So I'm happy to share some value with you however I can. But growing up as an athlete, I teach a lot of my students and my clients, when you develop this athletic mindset, which can play into being a tomboy, whatever that is. I mean, because look at the women nowadays playing sports at such high levels that we can't even imagine. Holy smokes. And it's not the way it used to be. There's not as much of a separating line. But as an athlete or a tomboy, what you learn is, you know what, listen, if you want to hit the ball, if you want to shoot the basket, if you want to run track, you have to practice, you have to show up, and it has to be about consistency. So without that, you're not going to have anything. So the women that I coach that have a background in athletics, what I find for sure is they actually have a higher achievement rate. Now, the great news is for somebody that might not have played sports in the background is I can teach you that same athletic mindset, which is going to catapult you into arenas that you would never, never imagine.
Yeah. How do you get to that? Somebody who comes in who might be overweight and was always awkward and doesn't think of herself as coordinated. And especially when you get to 50 and you've had your kids and you got the mom body, a lot of people don't bounce back after they lose their baby weight. I remember after I had kids, I bounced back. I was one of those people that bounced back pretty quickly, which I was happy about, but then gained some weight a little bit later. It was like that 10 pounds. It's like, I can't get that 10 pounds off. And I remember thinking, well, I can't use having had a baby as an excuse anymore because it's been like 17 years. But how do you get somebody to think of themselves as somebody who's capable of that athletic mentality?
Absolutely. Well, I firmly believe that you have got to live from your future, not from your past, because it all goes back to a limiting mindset. And it all goes back to this slight shift that can occur where when you understand and accept the fact that impossible goals, according to Dr. Benjamin Hardy, are actually easier to achieve than possible goals, it eliminates all these other, what I call brain trash that could possibly enter into your mind. So, I mean, as a personal trainer, I used to train women that were 75 plus that were kicking the pants off of some of my 25-year-olds because they had decided to make a chance or decided to make a change. They made a choice to say, hey, these quote unquote golden, silver, and platinum years, as I call them, of our lives, they can either be the best years of your life or you can just continue doing the same thing, accepting that you are aging. And when you accept aging in the body, I find that you automatically start to go downhill. It's this idea of, oh, you're old, you shouldn't do this anymore, or I'm too old to do that. And because I've personally experienced women literally 80 years old, I had a gentleman that was 97 years old. It's just remarkable. So you cannot put these limitations on yourself because, as Marianne Williamson says, the famous quote is, it's not that we are, we're not in fear of our inadequacies. We are actually afraid of our deepest power. Like we're just actually afraid of success more than we are of failure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So while you were talking about that, it made me think, well, I love to take my grandkids to the trampoline park. And part of the reason I do that is, well, I want them to have fun, but I want them to see me as a very active person, somebody who can do a flip. And I think about so many people who are my age that say, oh my God, they're surprised because in their mind, grandmas can't do flips. So it is that. And I love the word. Before I hit record, she had the best word. She invented this word and it's so true. It exactly fits what we're talking about. So you share that word.
I did not invent it. I will give credit where credit is due. It's one of my coaches. So it's Myron Golden. And he always discusses about the lie-dentity. Stop listening to the lie-dentity of what you're trying to convince yourself that you are not, versus, you know what, we have to believe the fact that we're so much greater than what society might try to tell us, or what that mindset of someone else who might have set your mind in the past. Because somebody set your mind.
Yeah.
And I think when you make women especially realize, if somebody in your past has told you that you're too short, you're too heavy, you're too this, you're too that, well, they're setting your mind. But just like a thermostat, you can go and change the thermostat, honey. So if it's 75 degrees and you're hot, you need to turn it down to 70, okay? Or if you're cold and it's 65 degrees, you have the ability to turn it up. So it's just understanding what you are capable of. And most people, especially women, I find, they don't really realize the tremendous amounts of power and unstoppability that actually lies right inside of them. So
Yeah.
stop believing the identity that society tries to tell you, that once you get old, you throw in the towel. I mean, come on. Martha Stewart started her multi-million-dollar company at my age, at 50.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't give you excitement, I don't know what does.
Yeah. There's a lot of stories of people late in life, like Louise Hay, who had the publishing business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The woman who did Joy of Cooking. I think she started in like her 70s, Julia Child. So how did you have a lie identity? Did you, because you switched your career from personal training. So did at some point, because I when I think of personal trainers, I think they're pretty good at understanding the mindset,
Oh, yeah.
especially when, if you're dealing with high-end clients, people, you can help people lose weight, but they'll gain it back if you don't get that upstairs part going in the right direction. And so I would imagine that you at some point, well, you learned that, right? But did you find yourself in that stuck place where you weren't really doing what you loved? You were doing what you were good at, or what kind of life unfolded for you. I often say, or I like people to look at what their parents wanted them to do and what they were rewarded for when they were young, and maybe their parents hinted at them doing that, maybe they ended up doing and then weren't too happy later in life. So there's always those little bit of clues. But how about your story? How did it unfold?
Well, I'll go back to one of the first things that you said, where if you don't fix the mind, they're just going to gain the weight back. Well, this goes for any topic. I deal with a lot of wealth as well, teaching my women how to turn their annual income into their monthly income by learning business strategies and other possibilities that might be out there for them. But here's the reality. If you continue to try to fix the fruit without fixing the root, you're just going to go back into those bad old patterns. For example, they've done actually a study. I forget who did the study, but if somebody wins the lottery and the same person who has a wealthy mindset versus someone who has a broke mindset is given the same amount of money, give them 1 year and they will be directly back in the same position that they were before, because you have not learned new patterns. You have not learned new ways of thinking. Same thing with, if we go back to the health factor, people that did maybe lap band surgery or other drastic measures. It did not fix the root of the problem. The problem is not eating. The problem is not your spending out of your means. The problem is, why are you doing this? So oftentimes in society, or the lie-dentity, they focus so much on the what, but they're not focusing on why are you doing that? What is the reason? But why? You have to go deep into the roots, because the roots are in the darkness.
Mm.
However, once you shine the light of awareness on those roots that might be in the darkness, they can no longer hide. You cannot hide something that is brought to the light anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm big on the whole busyness blocks the light. And so I also think one problem with high achievers is they're so busy achieving in something they might not really be happy with,
Mm.
that and those who are really unhappy, it's because they're not taking the time to be quiet and listen to those instincts that'll kick in if you allow that to happen.
And I'll take
Yeah.
that even a step further. If somebody feels that they are, what you're describing, is, Lori, is misalignment. You're
Yes.
misaligned.
Yes.
But in truth of the matter, if I may I be honest and brutally coaching, go
That's
into
what
my
we're here
coaching
for.
moment, go into my coaching moment. If you are accepting that misalignment, that is purely laziness. Because what you are choosing right now, you have decided that that's what you're choosing. So if you are choosing to stay in a situation that you are unhappy with, that's your choice. That's
Mm,
your choice. And
yep.
quite frankly, what I find is, as you probably well know, I always teach my students, listen, you have got to get out of the comfort cocoon. Stop looking out into the what if wilderness, because the biggest risk that you take in your life is betting on yourself. So when you bet on yourself and you understand that getting out of that comfort zone, which no growth happens in the comfort zone, this is not new information, but so many people become so lazy, so complacent, it's comfortable. It's like, oh, I don't need this. Oh, I have enough. Oh, I'll just make it work. And unfortunately, with the generation that I was raised by, not all, but some have decided to settle, and then
Mm,
they wonder why they are in a situation that they are in right now.
yeah.
And it, it's
Well,
it
I
it
always
really
say,
comes down
because
to
you know
that.
that a common response, especially if somebody's in an unhappy marriage, which if you've tried to work, I'm all for trying to work on your marriage, but if you try to work on your marriage and it still doesn't work, and people say, "Well, I made my vows," and maybe yeah, you made your vows, but the world is a darker place when you have two people who are unhappy walking it. And when you are strong enough and brave enough and fed up enough to walk into that what if wilderness, as you say, I love that, then you ultimately will have not only two happy people, but four happy people, because that's what happened when I was brave enough to do that. But I think that what if wilderness, I think what people look at is, and I love the show Stranger Things, is
Oh,
like
absolutely.
when they look in the what if wilderness, they see the upside down, the bad world, and they don't, our brain just isn't capable of thinking that we always have our blinders on. It's only what we can imagine that is possible. We don't think about the unimaginable that's possible, you know?
I do. In fact, it's actually one of the components that I teach. I teach a 3-day challenge every month, and I would love to invite your guests to the Unstoppable You challenge that we run every single month. And it goes back to the fact that what stands in the way becomes the way. So if
Mm,
there's something that you believe that is standing in your way, that's what you have to go towards. So in life, when we're setting goals for ourselves, there are only two options of how you deal with a goal. You either approach it like a buffalo. So I don't know if people know this, but when a storm comes, a buffalo will actually approach the storm. Therefore, the buffalo is actually in the storm and in that difficult time less than a cow who will stand and wait, or as I say, avoid the storm. So as the cow waits for the storm and is avoiding approaching the storm, Sadly enough, the cow is in the storm way longer than the buffalo. So, as I teach in the Unstoppable You Challenge, what is it that you are avoiding? Because if you just stranger things it and turn it upside down, and now you're going to approach that very thing that you're avoiding, that now becomes the way. And it's right on the other side of incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And time again, what you hear from people who have approached the storm is that going through the storm was the joy and not
Absolutely.
getting on the other side of the storm. And then you have that wisdom. You touched on the wisdom, how we get wise when we get older. And I think some people, they view their mistakes, they see things in their past as mistakes or regrets instead of trying to turn them into lessons or teachable moments, or how can I use this? Why was I taught that kind of thing? But I want to, so how did you get to a financial coach? Because you did personal training, which was more about getting in shape. That's the goals of people. And then you transitioned. When did you realize that that was a pivot you wanted to make?
After my back injury. So when I experienced a horrific back injury, and again, imagine everything that you do in your life depends on you being healthy and physically active,
Yes.
for sure. And then that stopped. And it was at that moment, I was 34 years old, I believe. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, I'm such a young person. How am I ever going to overcome this to continue to do the things that I'm doing as a personal trainer? So it was at that moment, that was a pivotal point, that was a turning point where I realized, like you said, maybe what seemingly is the worst thing ever that's happening to me right now, maybe it's a clue. So I took it as a clue to say, God had to slow my body down so he could speed up my mind. And at the time, my main client, I was living in New York City, right in the city in Manhattan. And my main client at the time was the senior vice president of a very large financial firm. So I started asking questions. I always say thinking is the hardest thing that most people won't do. Why are you not asking questions? If you're seeing a person that's a multi millionaire, I was like, let me just start to ask some questions as to how this individual accomplished that. So it started to really intrigue me. Then fast forward when the world stopped, I was forced to pivot really quick, fast, in a hurry, even though I was making that transition as a financial advisor while I lived in New York City. I ended up transitioning to Florida, which is where I live now. And then fast forward, I pivoted again, but now I incorporate all of those things that I learned from the fitness world, the financial world, and now I'm able to help my women on many different levels, primarily in the clarity, courage, and confidence level. Whatever you need help with, we dive deep into that. So having all of those very, very deep experiences, both in the entrepreneurial world as well as the corporate world, it's given me a very broad base to help a woman who might be struggling with many of those things. Maybe you're struggling with overwhelm or being misaligned in a workplace, or as a woman feeling like you're not being heard the right way, because the reality of it is women need to be coached in a different way than men do. It's just a fact. It's what my women tell me all the time, what my clients tell me all the time. So I found that, you know what, this is just a nice little niche that I have carved out. And it was my purpose to serve. So as how we started this conversation, I really have come into this place of purpose plus passion, which means success acceleration. So if I can help another woman to do the very same thing, to come into that alignment with not what are you doing right now, but what is it that you're actually meant for? What are you meant to do out there in the world? And once you find that, that's when you become unstoppable. No questions asked.
Yeah. Yeah. Two thoughts. So I want to wrap up what you were saying about when you had this client who had things that would be of value to you and you didn't necessarily recognize it right away. It's so funny how the path before us, the path forward for us, is the universe giving us this here, here, here. And we just don't see it. We're so ignorant. We're so out of touch with for whatever reason, dismissing or again being too busy to even pay attention. But I just find that so interesting that thank God that you kind of saw that. Sometimes they're called breadcrumbs. I think Tony, what's his face? What's Tony Robbins? He refers to them
Robbins.
to like breadcrumbs. The universe gives you little hints. So that was the first thing that I thought of. The second thing, which I thought of when we first started talking, when you talked about purpose, a lot of people ask, and I'd like to know what your answer is for this, is do I just have one purpose in life? What do you think?
Maybe, maybe not. We all have a very, very, very specific assignment on our life. So I cannot tell a woman, oh, you have multiple purposes. That's not my job. That's God's job. But if you are open to the voices that you are hearing, okay, and not necessarily the ones that are in your head. I often tell my clients, sometimes you have to stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself. What is it that you want to do? Because everything is the power of the voice and the pen. So whatever you write down, whatever you speak, you can kind of see that as a path forward. I do want to back up to share with your listeners this story about that pivot, about my client, because the time that that was happening, I had just gotten back up on my feet of moving from Los Angeles to New York City. And within 1 year, that gentleman that I was learning all of these new concepts from, because once the mind is expanded, you cannot contract it again. It only works if it's open, right? And literally about a year after I moved to New York City, I went to his apartment to share some very exciting news with him. I had been promoted at Lululemon as an ambassador and all these exciting things that were happening as a personal trainer at the time. And when I got to the apartment, I walked into the apartment and I realized that there was a presence there, but nobody was home. And it was this moment, Lori, of just chills up and down my body, that this intuition that women have. I'm sure your listeners have this insane amount of intuition. And when I called out his name, there was no answer. I walked back into one of the rooms. There was nobody there. I walked back into another room. Nobody was there. And something kept pulling me to a different room. Unfortunately, when I walked into the back room, he had suffered a massive stroke. And I was the one that found him. And realizing in that moment, it was not about me at all. I had to think quick on my feet. Thankfully, with a kinesiology background, I knew first aid and CPR and how to dial 911 and how to stay calm and all of these things. He was alive when I found him, but he could no longer speak. He had already been paralyzed. And fast forward 2 weeks later in the hospital, unfortunately, he passed away. But I promised him that I would pass along that legacy. Now, that was one of the most difficult times in my life because I had nobody in New York City. Have you ever, any of you that are listening, have you ever had a moment in your life where you think that you're riding on top high of the mountain and then all of a sudden it just crumbles beneath you and nothing, it's completely out of your control, completely out of your control. But now you are forced to make a decision. You are forced to, yes, survive, but you have to decide that even through this difficult time, I need to be learning something I need to be learning, or is it pushing me in a path? Is it pushing me in a different direction? So this was actually the pivotal moment that I thought to myself, okay, if I'm not going to do finance, I have to pass on this beautiful legacy that this man has left. He donated over $1.6 million a year, just giving back, and just the amount of lives that he was able to impact was just such a remarkable thing to see. And I promised him that I would do the same thing. So when I talk to my clients about, listen, you're here, you're in this program, you have decided to make me your coach for one of three things, and sometimes it's all three things. It's either impact, income, or influence. And I find that the women who really succeed at the highest level are actually firing on all of those cylinders. They're having a massive amount of influence, helping other people through problems. They're able to make an impact in the world because now they've been able to increase their income. Why? Because they've stepped into their full power. They've been able to step into their full alignment to then serve back down. And as I always say, Lori, you know what? It is our responsibility to give someone else not a hand out, but a hand up. And that's what I learned from that experience. It was the most difficult time in my life, one of the most difficult times in my life, but it taught me so many lessons in that extreme storm, shall we say.
Well,
Extreme storm.
it's such an interesting story because I've heard similar stories where it's a life and death situation and a promise is made to a greater being.
Mhm.
And the promise is usually, I will serve you in this way. And it's so crazy that remarkable things usually happen as a result of that
Oh,
commitment. It's almost like a recommitment of probably what you made as a soul before you came here, but it's you're in your human body and it's like this huge aha moment. So thank you for sharing that. That is pretty powerful. Yeah.
mm,
So that's great. One of the things I wanted to touch on because your publicist sent, and this struck me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't heard these two words used in terms of unstoppable. So these are 5 traits of an unstoppable woman. And I also want to say that anyone can be unstoppable. So if you're listening
absolutely.
and you're thinking, oh, that's for young people, or I'm too old to be unstoppable anymore because I'm too tired or whatever, that can change. Like we said, that's a lie-dentity,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Yes, yes. But the 5 traits are mindset, character, personality, transparency, and communication. And the ones that I don't hear very often, and I think it'd be fun to talk about, are character, personality, and transparency. And transparency is an interesting one. So, the question that I would have for you about these, starting with character and personality, what is the difference between those two? And why are these, in what way are they traits? Because it doesn't say good character, it just says character. It doesn't say good personality, bubbly personality. It just says personality. And so I'd like to know, and some people might think they're the same thing, but they're clearly different. So tell me about those two words and why they are two of the traits.
Absolutely. Well, I will definitely start with character because your character is absolutely how you show up every single day. Are you the person that shows up to a meeting 15 minutes late? Or are you the person that shows up 15 minutes prior to the meeting? Are you the person that shows up screeching at the last minute, showing up like a hot mess? Or are you coming prepared, poised, and confident? That's your character. So, whatever you are doing in your day, if once again, if you are making excuses for not doing the thing, that's your character.
Like practice, like you were talking about as athlete, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, to put a judgment on it, I think a judgment, you shouldn't be putting judgments on people, anyways, other than yourself, of how can I make my character unstoppable? What is it that I need to do to constantly improve my character? Because as you may very well know, people often do it backwards. If we're talking about be, do, have, people want to have the thing without being the person that they need to become. And then they're making excuses about doing the thing that they know they have to do to get to the thing that they have. So your character is all about becoming the person that you need and want and desire, and that more importantly is you are destined to be. Are you willing to look at that person? Are you willing to look at the character in the mirror and say, wow, am I proud of that character that I'm showing up as? Or am I disappointed in that person? Am I ashamed of that character? Because you don't have to be tied to anything. Everybody can constantly reinvent yourself yesterday, tomorrow, the next day, 10 years from now, 25 years from now. So once again, falling back into the identity, oh, well, this is just my character. This is how I am. I'm never going to change.
Just like my
Well, that's your
mom or just like my so and so. Yeah.
that's your
Or
choice.
playing victim, like, oh, I'm this way because I was abused or I was lied to, or, so I can't trust. One of the things that comes up with character to me is because this was something that I was clueless about, is I think to understand the character you want to be, you have to start with your values. Like,
Absolutely.
what do you value? And I never even thought of my values. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, values. I remember when somebody first asked me what my values were, and I was like, oh my God, I have never even really thought about that. Are your actions aligning with your values? And if they aren't, then you're out of character, right?
Absolutely. My whole definition of values is you have to begin with the truth. Everything that you look through, whatever lens you are looking through, is it through the lens of truth? Because things that are true might not always be truth, if you're picking up what I'm throwing down. So for me, the Bible is truth. That is the truth. So everything that I look at through my lens, if it doesn't align with that
Mm.
truth, it is out of alignment for me.
Ah, so you're doing the true false test for the truth.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love
Absolutely.
that. Well, that was really good.
Absolutely.
Such a great conversation. Okay, personality.
Ah,
Because
personality.
I think of I had this student and wonderful student, but she was so stuck in her idea that she had a bad personality because her husband was this effervescent, bubbly, outgoing, and would they go to parties, everybody wanted to sit next to him, and he just was the life of the party. And so she carried this identity that she was kind of a stick in the mud. And it was so sad that she couldn't see and get out of that identity that's not really who you are. That's
Absolutely.
it's kind of being created. So yeah. So I guess with this, how's personality different than character? What is personality?
Personality is anything that you want to make it. As women, I'm sure you can relate, Lori. Sometimes I define personality as what hat are we supposed to wear today? Because if I'm on a podcast, I am definitely wearing a different personality than if I'm at a baseball game with my fiance. It's a different personality. I'm the same character of person, but it's a different personality.
I love
Am
that.
I used to sing in the praise team for our church. That's a different personality if I'm in a personality of I'm worshiping the Lord versus if I'm on a podcast versus if I'm at a baseball game or versus if I'm at a spa. Okay. And in regards to everybody's personality, yes, there are tons of people that are extremely outgoing, and there are tons of people that are extremely introverted. I'm actually an extroverted introvert. So I love going to things and learning things and being around high level entrepreneurs and high energy people and all of this. But when that time is over with, that personality, I don't want to be that personality anymore. I want to go home, snuggle up in bed, grab my dog, maybe watch a movie with my fiance and just relax and actually not talk to anybody. So it's a fluctuating, flexible thing. And I think the biggest thing that I would love to encourage your audience to be okay with is if you enjoy your personality and you're happy with your personality and your personality is bringing wonderful things into your life, that's probably a really good sign. And the opposite is true. If you feel like, oh, I'm down in the dumps or I'm Debbie Downer, wah, 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 and that's what you continue to attract into your life, well, maybe you might want to shift how your personality is portrayed out to the world because it really is true. We get back what we reflect. So, high energy people, high vibration people, it doesn't mean that you have to wear a big, flowery, pink, loud blouse like me. That's just part of my personality. It's not what that means. Some of the most interesting, intelligent, deep, wise people I've ever met have a very quiet, subdued personality. That's just how they are.
Yeah.
But their character is still of quality. So,
Yeah.
what do you want to attach onto that makes you feel good? I like to wear colors. I like to be vibrant. That's just my personality. I'm not
Yeah.
putting that on anybody else. That's just who I am. I can't, it's impossible for me to show up as anything that I'm not.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
It would not be me.
Yeah. To me, how I'm interpreting this is character is more about standing in your truth and being aligned with that, and personality is more how I show up and how I choose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, oh, maybe you're in the personality of like maybe you're going through a difficult time or you woke up in a bad mood, and the best thing to do to change your personality is to put on a good song and dance to it.
Go for a
Whatever song
walk.
that might be, but you just start dancing to it. And yeah, I got a few of those good ones that I can play, and immediately everything changes.
I love it.
So that's cool. I love this. Okay. And transparency.
Transparency goes back to authenticity. I personally, this is just my personal opinion, I don't believe that you have to dump your entire life, throw up on everybody with all of that. That's just my personal view. It's your choice. Sometimes maybe that helps people to do that. And if that is helping you, then continue to do that. But if it's not helping you and if it's not serving a purpose, I just firmly believe that if you're constantly talking about something that's not bringing you joy, you are just giving it more fuel. You're giving it more fuel. So the transparency of, yes, okay, I've been through difficult times in my life. That's me being transparent, but it doesn't mean that I necessarily want to continue to talk about it. It's part of my story, and it's part of what has formed parts of my character of who I am now versus who I was 25 years ago. So if anybody is going through a difficult time, understand that that will become very transparent to say, why is this happening to shape where am I going? I think of, when I think of transparency, I think of, you have to be able to see through it.
I was just going to say the exact same thing.
It's like
Yeah.
tissue paper.
Yeah.
Don't hide it. I'm not trying to
Yes.
hide anything of my
Yes.
past, but it doesn't mean that I want to talk about it all the time.
Yes.
It
Yes.
wasn't happy times in my life, so why would I give it more
Yeah.
energy? No thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people hide stuff because they're embarrassed. When if you share when it's appropriate, they love you even more because it's
Absolutely.
the realest you can be, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I normally don't share this story, but I feel like this conversation is pulling me to share this for your audience. When I first came into the financial services, I definitely built my business around women. And when you're dealing with a woman who may have come from a very difficult time, I started sharing my difficult time. I unfortunately was in an abusive relationship prior to my beautiful man that's sitting in the next room over there. And when I started sharing that story, which was a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, horrific time in my life, it was the connecting thread for these women.
Mm.
And 61 women out of 61 women that I sat down when I started tracking this phenomenon that continued to happen, 61 out of 61 women also had been in an abusive relationship. So it was at that moment that that transparency was evident, and they immediately felt a heart connection with me, and they immediately felt safe. It's like, oh my gosh, you've been through that too? I'm like, yes, girl, I hear you. I see you, but we're going to get you through it. It's going to be okay because I'm standing on the other side of this now. So although this may be like a really difficult time in your life, I promise you this too shall pass if you choose to go towards the light and not choose to continue to go back into the darkness.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me of Brene Brown's book,
Vulnerability.
The Power
Yes.
of, yeah, it's where I think it's, she uses the term open-hearted. And when you are vulnerable and when you're, I think, transparent at the right time, when, like you said, not vomiting it all over the place. Because sometimes I think how if you're overly transparent, then people start to think it's manipulative. Like, what are you trying to gain from it? Sympathy or whatever. When you're just doing it in the moment at the time when it's right, like you just did, means a lot. And it's open-hearted versus closed-hearted when you're hiding it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, such good stuff. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
Such a good conversation.
One of my coaches, I love her to pieces, and she has this wonderful thing that she always says, and it's hope. Help one person every day. And
Mm,
I hope that this interaction, this has been a wonderful interview so far, Lori. Thank you for your time. But in hopes of, even if one person is hearing this conversation and it might shift something for you, it only takes one to make that change in the world. It only takes one interview. It only takes reaching one person. Oh my gosh, listen to what I heard on this podcast. And then you have this, it's like the game of
Mhm.
telephone, right? You
Yeah.
see this little game of telephone. Oh, you got to share this. Oh, that was so great. So that would always be my hope anytime I go on a podcast, is if just one person can hear and it can help you to say whatever it is that you're going through right now, it doesn't have to last. It doesn't have to last. It can pass. And you know what? Just embrace it. Embrace the suck, as I say. You have to embrace the suck,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Because the more that you embrace the suck, you're going to get to success. It's really how it works.
We need to come up with some words for suck.
Yes.
Because you said embrace the success. So there's got to be S success, and you got to come up with a U and a C and a K. But
Well,
anyways,
suck
yeah,
kind of leads into success. So
yeah,
otherwise,
it
you know,
does. It does.
your mess is
Success. Yeah,
success.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, first of all, I want you to say that you helped one person because you helped me.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
just like feel happier as after talking to you for 45 minutes or an hour now almost. So thank you for that. I would like to ask you one final question. What And since you just had your 50th birthday, this is very appropriate. What are you most looking forward to in this next decade of life? Well, it sounds like you have a fiance, so it sounds like there is a wedding that will be coming. I was telling her before I hit record, I bought a wedding dress on my 50th birthday, and that was
Yes.
fabulous. I got married when I was 50 for the second time. Yeah, and it's what, 15 years later now. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So in 15
Yeah.
years, you could be me.
That's it. Well, this will definitely be the encore wedding. But I think for this chapter of my life, starting at 50, I am encouraging other women, oh my goodness, to understand that we're just getting started. Like this is it. So I recently had stepped out of my comfort zone. I'll share this story really quick. And I had the opportunity to pitch an idea and a concept to Kevin Harrington. Kevin Harrington was one of the original sharks on Shark Tank, and he's actually the inventor of the infomercial.
Hmm.
Really, really long story short, by me stepping out, being courageous, being confident, and just saying, hey, what do you have to lose? Just go for it. I am happy to now welcome him onto my advisory board. He will
Hmm.
actually be a guest speaker on my Unstoppable You challenge that will be happening every single month, but particularly this one that's coming up right now. So it's just a testament to say, when you place yourself into very uncomfortable situations, you never know what can possibly happen. I would never in a million years dream that I can have Kevin Harrington help me and help other women. So by having this alignment with him, it just accelerates everything that I want to do, which is help all of these other women and just go much faster to be in alignment with somebody like that, who stands for women, who wants to help women build a brand and really get out there in the world. So that is what is coming up. I'm on a mission to close the gender wage gap. 2020 absolutely exposed the gender wage gap. We're still 82 cents to every dollar. So this was part of the pitch that I pitched to him. And moving forward, if anybody would like to come on board, we are about to change this narrative once and for all. And it doesn't mean just pounding your chest for only women. It's women who are willing to step out of the comfort zone, be confident, and we are the new leaders, aligned with men who understand how powerful we are. And when you have this collaboration of men that understand growth and men that understand women, their power and what we can bring to the table, it is an unstoppable force. So that's what I'm most excited about at this point.
Well, as you can tell, it's great. I'm very excited for you. It also goes to show you that if you just believe in the limitless possibilities, you don't have to know what it is. You just believe it's possible and say, hey, Lord or universe or whatever you want to say, bring it on. And I can handle it. And I will not be afraid. I think that's amazing.
As
Yeah.
I always say, I'll leave your audience with this. If you are even on the fence of making a really tough decision, and if you do decide and it doesn't really scare you, like, oh my gosh, it makes you so uncomfortable, like you have butterflies in your belly and you're just fearful, it's not the right choice. But if it does scare you, if it makes you so uncomfortable and nervous, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing right now? That's usually a sign that you're heading in the right direction. It scared, oh my gosh, to make that decision, to actually move forward and to do the thing and to pitch and to just step out and go, what do I have to lose?
Yeah,
I figured, you know what, you have a 50-50 chance. They either say yes or they say no. These are pretty good.
exactly. You'll never
These are
get a
pretty good
yes if
odds.
you don't
Yeah,
try.
you
Yeah, and
don't.
I think too, if you keep thinking about something, but your brain keeps trying to talk yourself out of it, then it's probably something that you should do and you should pursue. Although you shouldn't say, I should do this. You should say, I'm very intrigued, but scared at the same
Yes.
time. That's great. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. It's
I
amazing.
appreciate you, Lori. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for a beautiful conversation. And like I said, if anybody would like to reach out, I'm more than happy to help you however I possibly can. Kristin R. Ericksen at Instagram. The show notes, it'll be in the show notes, but we have some really fun things coming up. Hey, women
And your
age
workshop,
50
which we'll
plus.
yeah, we'll put the
Yes,
link in the show notes. And if you miss the next one, you can still use the link for future ones. So that
absolutely.
don't worry about it. All right. Bye.
Bye, you guys.